Alrighty. Well, thank you all for attending today. We're so excited to have everybody in our training. It's going to be a really good one. I'm really excited for it. I just wanted to remind everybody that this is a recorded session. And so we're going to be having these videos and these trainings posted on our YouTube later. So if you just want to go back and look at those to refresh after this course, or I more than invite you to share these with colleagues and to share this link with colleagues as well, so that in the future they can come to the trainings. We'd love to have everybody here. I also just want to say that to get your certificates of attendance today after this course, you do have to stay for over 70%. And so we ask that you stay for at least 45 minutes or more to get that certificate. And then I'll be sending those out after we have tea time with Jose, our safety advocate. And so, yes, I pass it over to Jose right now just to share a little word of encouragement with you guys before we start.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Leah. Thanks, Natalia, for joining us. I see you, Howard, sir. Thank you so much for coming through, and all the 15 participants. Thank you so much. We honor your time. We honor just you being around this session. And today, as the day was starting, I was just looking at my calendar, and I said, whoa. What is happening currently in Kenya is that exams are about to start. And during the exam period in Kenya, we find that a lot of students get to ban, to light up their schools. You know, they tend to light up their schools in the name of panicking. They don't want to do exams. They don't want to do anything. They want to extend the exam because, hey, I'm not ready. You know, and after all, I usually ask myself, who's actually ready for exams? Nobody. So another thing, again, that is happening in Kenya, in August, we're going to have the general elections. So it's more of like an examination in the sense that we're going to have new leaders taking us through in the next 5 years. And I said, so what about us firefighters? You know, so what in the sense that what can we do to bring a change that everybody is panicking or everybody is tensed and anxious? What about us? In the past, when the schools and examination and somebody's on, when the schools and elections are about to start, there are a lot of chaos. So for me, my encouragement right now would be, let's not wait for the chaos to happen. You know, let's not be reactive. Let's not go react and go like, oh, there's a fire in X, Y, and Z place. Oh, there's another fire in X, Y, and Z place. You as a firefighter, we are called now to action. That we've been talking about so much about fire prevention. In fact, you as a firefighter know so much about prevention, you know, and you know very well that prevention is better than cure. I'd rather prevent getting sick than actually treating the sickness. So my call to action as all the firefighters in Africa, please, let's go out there. Let's go into these schools. I was so encouraged to see somebody post in our networking group on Facebook that they were training students, secondary school students. What about you in your area? It's about time you go and train your community, you know, about how to be safe. Why not to ban businesses? Why not to ban homes? Why not to ban the schools? You can do it. You know why? We have the resources in the sense that we have the curriculum on the Africa Fire Mission website, and also on NFPA, and also on YouTube. We've been talking about all these things about fire prevention. So please, this is our time now for action. Let's not just sit in the firehouse waiting for a fire to occur. Let's prevent the fire. Let's prevent the fire by saying, let's go to 8 kilometers radius of the schools around us, 8-kilometer radius of the communities around us, all right? And that will actually save a lot of hassle and even save our lives having to go become, instead of being reactive, we become proactive. Thank you very much for staying with me on our word of encouragement. I pass it over now to Leah to take us to the next session. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Jose. I definitely resonate with that this week. As a student, it is my exam week, so I can tell you all that it is very stressful. And you're right, Jose, no one's ever ready for an exam. I know that I am not. So thank you for that. I always just love hearing your words of encouragement. And as we go into our session today, I invite everyone, if you have a question, please feel free to unmute, raise your hand, type it in the chat. I'll be looking out for you guys just to make sure that we're answering every question that we have. So please feel free to do that. But I just want to pass it off to Natalia now, and you can take it from here. We're excited to learn from you today.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I am Natalia Flores-Quiroz. I'm from Chile, so if you find a weird accent, that's why. And I'm going to be talking today about fire investigation in informal settlements. This was my PhD research topic. Sorry? Oh. Okay, so this was my PhD research topic, and I'm just going to go through the findings, okay? Okay, so today we're going to have a bit of an introduction, then the considerations when conducting fire investigation in informal settlements, how to conduct a fire investigation in an informal settlement, what are the factors that influence this type of fires, and for that we're going to see a real fire. Then using a bit of theory, we're going to try to analyze the fires and see if we can get the same information. Then also we're going to learn about the fire cause and what can we do to make things better, and some conclusions. This work was based on informal settlements in Cape Town in South Africa, so please keep that in mind in case informal settlements in your country are different, okay? Okay, so in South Africa, more than 5,000 informal settlement dwelling fires were reported in 2019. If we see here, okay, now, if we see here, the number of fires in formal settlements is almost the same as the number of fires in informal settlements. The problem is when we look at the fire fatalities. In informal settlements, it's more than double. And also another big problem is that close to 40% of all fire causes in informal settlement are classified as undetermined. So now in South Africa, after a fire incident, the fire department completes a fire rescue service incident report, which is a generic form that is used for all types of fires, and consider those 11 official fire causes that are here. Okay, this might work for most of the fires, but in informal settlements, it's a bit different. The main problem is with the category of open flames, cooking, heating, and lighting. As you can imagine, in informal settlements, open flames are used for cooking, for lighting, and for heating purposes. So if a fire is classified as open flame, we need to know what those open flames were being used for. And if it's, for instance, classified as cooking, it's important to know what source of energy was being used, okay? So the considerations that we need to have in mind. Informal settlements are very different from other type of settlements. So I'm going to talk now about the construction methods, materials, and configurations. We can see here the construction materials that are used are timber. We have some metal sheetings, cardboard, and also we can see here some leakages, right? In here, if we look at the configuration of the settlements, the dwellings are located very near one to the other, and all of these factors make that the fire can spread easily through the settlement. This is why when there's a fire, it's very likely that it's going to spread to more dwellings, and that therefore it's going to affect more homes which might also relate with the fact that there are more fatalities in these fires. The other issue is the protection of the fire scene. Usually when you want to investigate a fire, you would block the access to the fire scene, and this cannot be done in these fires. As we can see here, and we're going to see throughout the presentation, when there's a fire, usually the residents don't leave the area. And as soon as the fire is extinguished, they start cleaning the area, and they start the rebuilding process. This means that the fire investigation must be conducted immediately after the fire, which means that firefighters should do this task, because no one is going to go there as fast as the firefighters. So how to conduct a fire investigation in an informal settlement? It depends on the level of damage that the fire produces. So for instance, if the fire doesn't reach flashover, we can use enclosure fire techniques and look for fire patterns in the walls, in the floors, in the furniture. And we are very likely to find the point of origin, cause of fire, ignition sequence, and fire spread sequence. If the fire reaches flashover, there's going to be very limited physical evidence in the scene. So we should try to look for fire patterns in the affected area, and also consider the witness statements. Witness statements are important in all of this. And for large post-flashover fires, when several dwellings are involved, we reach to the conclusion that these fire patterns that are formed are similar to the ones observed in wildland fires. So we should look for a V or a U-shaping burn pattern in the affected area. Clearly, the more damage, the less information we're going to be able to find. Okay. And the methodology that is proposed is the same for all types of investigations. First, we do a scene assessment, and we determine which category are we. And then we start with the data collection process, and the sources of information can be the firefighter's report. They can take pictures, diagram, field notes. We can also interview firefighters, residents. We can use satellite imagery, weather stations, media, and physical evidence. Then we analyze if the data collected is applicable. And then we might get information about the fire origin and the fire cause. With this, we can propose hypotheses. And if we don't have enough information, we will probably set undetermined, or we can go back to this process and do it again. I think the most important thing here is that usually when the fire doesn't reach flashover, or it's just affect one dwelling, the firefighters will not be called. So these types of fires, it's very unlikely that we're going to be able to investigate them, because the firefighters are not going to go to this. That's why my research was mainly based on large post-flashover fires. So what factors influence a fire in an informal settlement? And for this, we are going to analyze a real informal settlement fire. Okay, so this is what happened. In this area, there was a fire, 40 dwellings were involved, and in here, there was a CCTV camera. This camera recorded the complete incident from the first stages until the fire was extinguished. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you the video. Okay, great. So, okay, this is the first stages of the fire. Then we see how it starts. The video is very long, so it's going very fast, but we can actually see what's happening, okay? We can see how the fire is developing and what people are doing at these different times of the different stages of the fire. We can see how it starts spreading. People are here trying to do something. Then when they see that the fire is spreading, they start doing other things like trying to save their belongings. So there's a lot of movement. Okay, we can see now that the fire intensity is increasing. Still no firefighters at the scene. And they start moving their stuff. You can see how more and more people start gathering here on the streets. And on the back of the settlement, we also see a lot of movement of people moving their stuff to a safer place. We can see how the wind is influencing the spread of the fire, right? We can see the fire plume being pushed by the wind. That was an explosion, the one that we saw there. So then the fire intensity increases. At this time, there's already firefighters. We can see the hose there on the floor. And there we see the firefighters. The main problem here with the firefighters face is that they ran out of water. So every time they were controlling the fire, they ran out of water and the fire started increasing again. So it passed a lot of time. We can see the firefighters here on the left, just kind of waiting for more water supply. And then, let's see. We can see here on the left, the fire engines, there were 4, but that's what happened. They try to put down the fire, they ran out of water, and that happens continuously. Until at this point, the water tanker arrived, but we can see that the fire was already extinguished. It burned itself because there's nothing more to keep burning. I mean, there are houses on the sides, but due to the wind direction, they weren't really exposed. And at the back of the settlement, there weren't any more houses. So yeah, when this water tank arrived, it's kind of a bit too late. I think the same day, at the same time, there were several fires in Cape Town, so it took a long time for this water tank to get to this place. And yeah, these are the final stages. We can just see how the fire is extinguished and people are leaving now the streets. The fire is out and people are just cleaning the debris now, and firefighters are conducting mopping operations. Okay, so now I'm gonna go a bit more in detail, just showing some pictures. And okay, and we saw how when the fire started, it started developing. I don't think you saw that detail in the video. So this is an image at 1 minute after, and then 2 minutes after, we just see smoke. There are no flames, and this was due to the action of the residents, which is very important. But I'm gonna go in detail in the other section. So then, minute 3, we can start seeing a bit of a flame here. And then the fire just starts increasing and increasing and increasing. This is the explosion that we saw. This explosion took place when the firefighters were already here, so it creates a very dangerous condition for them. When I watched the video, I was surprised and I was like, oh my God. But the firefighters told me that it's something that usually happens. So, I mean, they're kind of used to this kind of explosions happening in informal settlements. But you can see the area that gets affected with these ones. And in here we have the final stages of the fire. At 33 minutes after the fire increased, after the fire started, the fire reached the back of the settlement. So it means that it already burned 40 houses in 30 minutes. And back after that, it's just kind of the fire decreasing because it's burning itself out, or then because the firefighters arrive with the water tank. Now I'm gonna show you a bit about the residents' behavior. So if we see here at the beginning, people were just walking around, and then when they notice that something's happening, they come and they start looking. Maybe they smell something burning, they saw the smoke. But when they are sure that it is a fire that's happening, they start with the bucket brigade, as we call it. And you can see that it seems that it's something that they are kind of maybe used to, or they are very well prepared. because it was very coordinated. People would bring their buckets and leave it there. The other, usually men, would apply the water to the dwelling. But as you might know, in informal settlements, people don't have access like tap water on their dwellings. So they usually have 1 or 2 buckets of water. So at some point they run out of water and the fire starts spreading again. Okay. After this is at minute 12, we can see that most of the people are just saving their belongings. But we still see people conducting firefighting activities like these men here in the roof, which are very, I would say, dangerous, right? Because if you see this guy, he was here at minute 12, and then this is what happened 2 minutes later. So if we take as reference these houses, like we have the fire here, and he was just there, right? It could have been very dangerous for him. Another thing that I was able to identify in the video was this refilling sequence. So since they don't have access to water in their houses, they must go to a communal tap and refill the buckets. And this whole sequence lasted like 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. And then at the end, we can see people taking care of their belongings. Still, these people from the dwellings adjacent to the ones that got burned are still protecting theirs. And yeah, this is the image at the end of the fire, right? We can see that people didn't really evacuate the area completely. They just moved to a safer place, but they are still there. So once the fire is extinguished, as I mentioned, they will go back, clean the place, and start rebuilding probably the next day. So that's why we don't have a lot of time to investigate what happened. As for the firefighters' operation, from the fire report and from the video, I could reconstruct this timeline. We can see that this is the time the video recording started. 2 minutes after, we saw the bucket brigade in action. And the phone call was made 5 minutes after the video started. So this is kind of interesting because people, instead of calling the firefighters, they opted for try to put the fire down. This is not like, it's also, we could say it's only 3 minutes, but we saw how fast the fire developed. So maybe 3 minutes in this type of fires is important. And also, yeah, I saw in other cases that this was much more time. So then we have when the fire engines arrive, then we have the explosions. When the last fire engine arrived, we must remember that 4 engines were at the scene. 42 minutes after the video recording started, the water tanks arrived at the scene, and then the fire was extinguished at 50 minutes. Okay. And we can see here the operations. Here you don't see the fire engine, but you can see the hose at minute 10. This is when the first fire engine arrived. This is another fire engine arriving. We can see people here. And in this one, we see the firefighters just standing here waiting for water. There's nothing they can do without water. And then when the water tanks arrive and when everything was extinguished. So the question is, do we get the same information from investigation? And this is why it's important, because at the end, these type of videos are very weird to obtain. I think I check a lot of CCTV cameras. I got 30 videos that contain something related with the fire, and only one you could actually see what was happening. The other one was very blurry, was very far, it was at night. So it's not like we're gonna get these videos all the time and we can learn from them. So we are like, I want to show if we can get something similar from conducting an investigation. So for this part, I analyzed 3 large fires. One of those is the one in the video, so I can benchmark the findings of this work with those. And so we have the first case study, that was the one we saw in the video, with 40 dwellings affected. Then we have the second one with 80. Then the third one with more than 1,000. And the sources of information that I use are for all of them, the fire incident report provided by the firefighters. I had access to the occurrence book just for the first two. I interviewed firefighters for all of them, but okay, so I interviewed the firefighters for all three cases, but when I interviewed these ones, I was showing them the video. So I didn't want to use this because I think maybe the interview wouldn't be the same if they weren't seeing the video. I used satellite imagery, weather station, and the media. And then I did the analysis as I showed before. So for the topography, that we know that it has a big influence in the fire spread. There was a flat terrain. For the wind conditions, this is what I got from the firefighters report, and this is what I got from the nearest weather station. So you can see that they are very different. Okay, but first of all, this nearest weather station is not really that near. And also the conditions where the wind is measured, it's very high. So at the end, the conclusion is that these weather stations don't provide information that is really representative of what's happening at the fire scene. So it's very important that firefighters can register and document these wind conditions and ambiental conditions, especially if there are wind changes and stuff like that. So the speed and the direction, right? The fire cause from the fire report was electrical fault. Okay, we can see here the wind direction, and based on this, we can get that the fire must have spread like this. We have a kind of a wildland fire pattern with the area of origin. We can determine the dwelling of origin. We can see here in this image, maybe it's a bit better, that there are some unusual big distances between this dwelling and this. So that's probably why this the fire didn't spread to these homes here. And we think that for these two was the firefighters' actions that stopped the fire from spreading to these houses. And this one were kind of safe because the direction of the wind was in that direction. So we can see here that if I try to reconstruct a timeline, just using the firefighters report, it has much less details, right? And I don't know if you remember, but the other fire, we knew that the fire stopped spreading or reached all the buildings that are affected after 33 minutes of the video recording started. While here, I could get that the fire was extinguished at 12, more than 1 hour later. So the information that we get from the video and from the fire report is very different. I would also like to point out here, when I said that the fire didn't spread because there was nothing else to burn, right? This was the condition at the time of the fire. You see all this area there was nothing built there. And this is what's now. So if a fire would happen now, this fire would just spread. Okay, and it would affect all of these dwellings. This is another case. 80 dwellings were affected. Also flat terrain, but there's a small hill over here. According to, these are the wind conditions according to the fire report, and this is with the weather station. We see that in this case, not only the magnitudes are, well, the magnitudes are kind of similar, but the wind direction is completely opposite. So what I think happened is that this hill, you can see a bit of detail there, it's not very big, but it might have an impact on the wind direction. And maybe the wind came from here and then it took this direction, okay? And the fire cause, it was cooking. Also, it comes from the fire report. I asked how do they get this, how do they determine the fire cause? And they said that it's mostly through interviews to the residents. Okay. So for this case, we got two potential fire spread sequence, like this, more like a V, and this one, this more like a U with a bit of back burning here that could have been produced by this wind going a bit turbulent, creating a bit of turbulence because of the hill. Okay, this, if you see this fire, there were plenty of other dwellings that could have kept burning. But the thing is that in here, there was a chemical factory and steel products. So from my interview with the firefighters, they mentioned that because it was a critical area, they sent a lot of resources very fast, because if an ember would reach this chemical factory, it could have been a disaster. So that's why we see here that there were 7 fire engines and 3 water tanks at the scene at some point, okay? And this one for the case study number 3 that affected 1,000 dwellings. Also a flat terrain, wind conditions, and the fire caused open flames. It doesn't say much if they were being used for heating, cooking. If we look at this timeline, from the media, I got that it said that the residents noticed the fire around 3 p.m. And the phone call was received at 4:15, so more than 1 hour late. Okay, so this is very, very critical for the firefighters' response. Also, I read in the fire report that when the person called, it wasn't from the settlement itself. They were calling and saying, hey, I'm seeing a very black smoke coming from this settlement. So we could say that, yeah, the fire has been burning for a while, yeah, just to see this black dense smoke. So considering the wind, considering the firefighters' interviews, I got this estimated fire spread sequence. We can see that the fire didn't spread anymore because there's a road here in this part that it's kind of big. And I think if this road would have kept going until all the end here, it would have been the same. Okay, so we can see how roads actually can act as a bit of a fire break, but also provide the space for the firefighters to bring the engines there, right? Because the main problem here is that this is the only road that is big enough for the firefighters' fire engines. So when the fire starts spreading this side, there's nothing they can do, because they can't reach that area. So yeah, that's why so many dwellings got affected. I think that, and the fact that the phone call was made 1 hour late. So. Okay, so if we look at the fire spread rates, and this is gonna be a good way of showing how good or bad the theoretical analysis was. We have here the case study number 1 with the video. In here, the 3 cases that were studied with the theoretical analysis. These are some real fires that have been analyzed in literature. This is the Misamuyetu fire, and these are 2 fires from Japan. And this is an 20 informal settlement dwellings experiments that we did here, here in the university. So if we look at this one and we compare all the real fires, we see that the spread rates are kind of similar. We have 1.2, 1.2, 1.7, and it depends on the wind conditions. Now, if we look at the ones that I got from the theoretical analysis are very, very low. And we can compare these two that were supposed to be the same, and it's not representative at all. But this is because of the lack of detailed information that I could get from the reports, okay? And now if we look this one, that it's the experimental, it's much higher than the other ones, which makes sense because while we are conducting experiments, we are not applying any water. We just let it burn, but no firefighting activities are taking place, okay? Still, the fire spread is very fast. And we did all of this analysis, we watched the video, and we never find out anything about the fire cause, except for what was written in the report that came from the residents. But how can we know if those fire causes are real or not, right? We can't check with anything because from this analysis, we didn't get any information. So one of the main problems is very difficult to investigate the fire cause, which is probably the most important thing to know because it's the only way that we can prevent the fires from happening. And then So the approach that I took for this part was a bit different. I analyzed a survey that was conducted to more than 2,000 dwellings after the Imisamuyetu fire. And these are the questions that were asked. And these are the three that include risk perception. So they asked, what do you consider to be the greatest fire risk in Imisamuyetu? So that's in the whole settlement. And then what do you consider to be the greatest fire risk in your household? So this could be considered like a general risk, like the whole population, and this is a personal risk, so my household, my risk. And then what are the things you would like to reduce, you would like to do to reduce fire risk? So how did I go from the risk perception to the fire cause? So risk is probability times consequences, and the probability of having a fire can be related to the fire causes, okay? So the presence of ignition sources could be open flames, cigarettes, unsafe cooking or heating methods. The circumstances could be irresponsible behaviors like cooking while drunk or cooking and going to bed or kids playing with matches. And the availability of combustible material, it relates with the combustible materials present in informal settlements like beddings, curtain, construction materials. And the consequences, which are the fatalities, the injuries, and the dwellings affected, can be related to the informal settlements conditions, such as the dwelling characteristics, the limited access to basic services like water, and the close proximity to the dwellings, between dwellings. Okay, so this is what we got. In blue, we have the general risk, so the whole settlement, and in orange, the personal risk, their own household. And we can see how the risk perception changed dramatically for some of the items that we have here. For instance, for a lot of people mentioned that irresponsible drinking behavior was one of the main fire risks in the settlement. But when they are consulting in their own household, they say, no, that's not a problem in my house. The same happens for irresponsible cooking. We have 19% versus 3%. And when consulting about the fire risk, 2% said that there was nothing, 0.2% said that there was nothing risky in the settlement, while 6% said there's nothing risky in my household. So this shows maybe the lack of fire awareness, or maybe how we don't realize the risks that we have in our own household. So it shows us how important it is to create this awareness in the community, okay? Now, this graph aims to determine if the risk perceptions that we saw from the inhabitants, plus the ones that we got from firefighters from previous research, are being well represented or not by the national statistics. So in here I have some of the fire causes, the official fire causes, and I added these two because the firefighters mentioned that the fires were gang-related, that they were concerned about the gang-related fires, and the firefighters and the residents mentioned irresponsible drinking behavior. Okay, but these are not in anywhere on the official statistics. So we can see that if we don't consider the personal risk, we just focus on these three, the electrical faults are being well represented, but the rest is all over the place. Especially here with open flames, we see that the statistics said that they are very one of the main causes of informal settlement fires. Firefighters are also concerned, but here it seems like the residents don't really are not really worried about open flames, which is kind of weird. But then if we go to cooking, heating, and lighting, we see that the statistics don't say much. The firefighters don't say much either, but the residents are very concerned about this, especially with cooking and lighting. So this could mean that the open flames that we are talking about here are being used for cooking and for lighting, which is very important, right? Because if we want to make these settlements a bit safer, maybe we could introduce some sort of safer lighting dispositive or device instead, so they don't use candles, or maybe try to for them not to use paraffin stoves, right? So we see here how the national statistics are not accurately capturing the causes of informal settlement fires, and that maybe we could add a bit more of information in order to capture this concern. So what can we do? We could improve the data collection system. What I have here is the incident reporting system that they use in the USA, which is in another level. But we can take whatever we found it's interesting and maybe incorporate it in our systems. Okay, so they have all of these modules for that according to the type of fire they have, and then they are filling a lot of these forms, which I'm going to show now. We can see here that it's a lot of information related with the firefighters, like when did they heard about the fire, when did they arrive, when was the fire control, okay, what resources they use, what actions were taken, like just firefighting activities, or also rescue, or I don't know, some sort of other activity. And about the casualties, were they just civilians, or was there firefighters also there? They also provide a lot of information about the property, which might not be very useful in this case, but still I found it very interesting for other types of fires. For instance, was there a detector? Did it work? What was the property being used for? And they have a lot of details. And for here, if you see the ignition also, like the area of origin, the heat source, but from here, what I found my most interesting is the human factors which contributing to ignition. Like were people asleep? Were they under the influence of drugs and alcohol? Or maybe it was mentally disabled or physically disabled. Okay, so this would be an information that it would be interesting to have. I know, for instance, we can't say for sure there was alcohol or drugs involved because we need to get tests, but this possibly gives us some sort of information that could be useful. And the other thing we can do is improve the data collection process and the analysis by, for instance, incorporating these measuring tools at the field. I've seen that sometimes for wildland fires, these are used, but not for this type of fires, which kind of makes sense if you think of these fires as an enclosure fire. But from what we saw and from the materials and how the fire behaves, it's when it spreads to a lot of dwellings, it's more similar to a wildland. There's also this fire web incident management tool where you can collect data in real time. Like you can, with this application, you can document the fire lines at different times. You can take pictures, you can record the interviews and everything. And in here, I incorporated this because this is taken from the fire report that we use here in South Africa. And we see, okay, official fire cause, electrical details, suspected power surge of electrical current to faulty plug socket, okay? And then the additional information that it's not documented anywhere, it says that it's informal electrical supply, which is very important because then we know that the problem is not electricity, that's not electricity, that it's unsafe. It's the fact that they are using informal electrical supply, right? For instance, here it was cooking, the stove overturning and igniting bed, and the witnesses indicate that the man was under alcohol. Okay, but this information is not being processed anywhere. So maybe we could improve the analysis of the data too. So the conclusions. There are several problems with associated to the identification of the fire cause. And this could be the limited information that is documented after the fire, the lack of time and resources to conduct post-fire investigations, and the generic form that, at least in South Africa, it's being used. With regards to the fire spread, we saw that it's primarily influenced by the wind, the firefighting actions, the availability of combustible material, the close proximity between buildings, and the topography. For the residents' behavior, we saw that the community worked together to try to minimize the damage. The main actions were firefighting, saving belongings, and evacuating the area. And we also saw how critical was the first intervention. That's why it's very important to engage with the community and start these bucket brigades, try to train them, and maybe we can see a fire starting but not spreading to so many other dwellings. And for the firefighters' operations, the response was affected by delayed notification, the difficulties in reaching the affected area. We saw that with these very small roads, it's very difficult to get there. The lack of water supply, and also this item that I didn't mention before, but it's the hostility from residents. When I was interviewing the firefighters, they mentioned that in more than one opportunity, they have been attacked, that the people cut their hoses, or that sometimes they have been mad. So this is very critical, right? And the benefits of investigating real fires is that we can understand the fire event in a holistic way. We understand all the factors that are influencing what happened. We can identify new problems. For instance, what I said about the hostility from the residents. Also here in South Africa now we are starting to see more and more two-story shacks, which make the firefighting operations much harder. We can use it also for more theoretical purposes, like develop or validate fire spread models. But we can also use it for enhance the firefighters' response, to create awareness in the community, and to develop better fire safety interventions in general. And that was my presentation. Thanks for your attention, and I don't know if there's some questions.
Thank you so much, Natalia. We appreciate your time, not only just to come and talk to us today, but also just the research that you're doing that is so important. And so thank you so much for sharing some of that with us. We all appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're just going to go into some time with Jose. But before, I just wanted to remind everybody that you can use the same link that you joined with us today. Next week, we're going to be having Russ Osgood on here. He's going to be talking about firefighter cancer awareness. So another very important topic. So please reach out to your colleagues or anyone interested in fire service. If they want to join, they're more than welcome. So you can just share that link with them.